When I was younger, my sister and I loved playing with Ouija boards. It's safe to say we were obsessed with them. We used to play it nightly, weekly. As many times as we could, we would play with that Ouija board. It got to the point that we didn't feel like it worked unless we would see some type of apparition or something move in the room. I liked them so much that I decided to make my own. And I was a pretty artistic kid. I went out and bought a really nice piece of wood, painted some letters on it, and made a planchet out of wood as well. It's actually very simple. And it seemed to work pretty good. But one night after my sister and I had finished, things started showing up in my house. And I would hear something walking across my bedroom floor at night. I really got freaked out. So freaked out that I hated to be at home alone. I used to come home from school right across the street for my lunch break, and I would be terrified of being there by myself. Well, one day I had to be about 13 years old. I was in my room playing with some toys. Now, I wasn't thinking about anything paranormal, and did I read a few magazines here and there? Yes, but outside of my Ouija board obsession, I didn't really delve into the paranormal. Like I said, the toy was on the edge of my bed, and out the corner of my eye, I could have swore I saw something reach up from under the bed and grab the toy. I still remember what it was. It was this Barbie doll hairbrush, and it was pink and it had the rhinestones on it. It was pretty, and I remember it. Now, after seeing this hand come from under the bed and grab the brush, I thought to myself, no, I couldn't have just seen that. Nah, that's not possible. It must have just been a shadow. I'm confused. I could not have seen a hand come from under the bed and grab this. Now, I started looking around the room for it, and I was clearly in denial because I didn't even go towards the bed. I walked over to the dresser. I went on the other side of the bed on my nightstand. I looked everywhere except for under that bed, mainly because I was afraid. Finally, I mustered up the courage to say to myself, you did not see that. And I put my head down and looked under the bed. And there was nothing there. Then I thought maybe it fell behind the top of the bed and it was just missing. So I moved my entire bed and it wasn't there. In fact, I never found it. After that experience, I was through playing with Ouija boards. I was 19 years old and living with my mom and two aunts in Miami, Florida. On this particular evening, I felt like staying at home and reading a book, but my mom came up with this brilliant idea of us going to the beach. Thought to myself, who goes to the beach at night? Initially, I said no, but she insisted. And what was I to do? This was my mother. Trying to find a way out of it, though, I mentioned, Mom, we don't have any clean towels. How are we going to go to the beach with no clean towels? She replied, no problem. We'll just take a sheet. We're only out there for a little while. So we all piled into the car, my mom, my two aunts and I, and headed down to Miami Beach. On the way, we had to stop at a gas station. And while the tank was being filled up, I kind of got this eerie, weird feeling. You know that feeling like something's going to go wrong? You know, part of me wanted to get out of the car and just walk back home. But logically, I thought there really was no reason for me to be afraid or feel any fear. At least that's what I thought. We arrived at the beach about 7 p.m., and we were the only people out there. I put the sheets on the sand and the rest of our stuff, and since only my two aunts knew how to swim, we all just went out into the water and stood waist deep. We've been standing around a while giggling and talking, and out of nowhere this man appears. He had black hair, this kind of olivey dark skin, and he was wearing black shorts. He didn't have on any watch, chain, or jewelry, no tattoos, no nothing. Besides being completely creeped out. My mind wondered, man, this dude must have walked a long way because I didn't see any other cars anywhere along the beach. That's when I took a look at his face. And his eyes were totally black. And what I mean by totally black means I couldn't see any white. There actually was no white. To this day, I still remember myself thinking, what the hell is wrong with this man's eyes? Then he spoke and sounded pissed. Don't any of you know how to swim? Go into the water. He kept his distance, but as I stood there looking at him, I didn't get the feeling that I was looking at a man. It was more like I was looking at some type of predator, and we were its prey. The best way to describe it is, you know that feeling you get when you go to the zoo, and you walk right up on the lion's cage, and you can look the lion straight in the eyes? That was more of the feeling. Now, my two aunties just turned their backs to him and avoided looking at him, while my mother and I continued to talk but keeping our eyes on him. I couldn't help but feel like he wanted us to go deeper into that water for a reason. Like, either he was going to get us or we were going to have some weird, freaky accident. A few minutes after that, I saw him walk out into the water about knee deep, then turn around and walk back. For a split second, I turned to face my mother, and then when I looked back, he was gone. So you'll understand, this beach is flat. You can see for miles in each direction. This man was gone. When we realized it, we all hustled out of the water, grabbed our stuff, hopped in the car, and drove away. While riding home, my auntie looked at me and said, "What the hell was that guy? And what did he want?" I told my auntie I don't know who or what he was, but he was bad. A few seconds later, we almost rear-ended a FedEx truck. My mom pulled over and parked on the side of the road and gathered her composure. It was almost like something bad was destined to happen. But thankfully, we made it home safely. All I remember my mother saying was, "You didn't want to go to the beach in the first place. We probably should have listened to you." It's really hard to start telling this story. Number one, because it seems completely illogical and totally unbelievable. However, I take my best shot at it. I've been practicing Wicca for over 10 years. In my profession, I have faced a little bit of everything from poltergeists to demons, Sasquatch, lichens. But the one thing that shocked me to my core was my encounter with Slenderman. What they are, I do not know. Where they come from, I still can't tell you. However, I do know they're powerful in ways that you can never imagine. This all started when I got a call from a close friend of mine who was having some paranormal activity. You see, she lives in a trailer. While she was at home alone, all kind of strange things began to happen around her house. It started with a cell phone ringing, then her TV turning off and on, the radio coming on, doors opening and closing. So much happening that she ran out of the house into the street and called me. Following morning, I went to her house and I conducted a blessing ritual. Now, in my mind, that should have been it. That ritual that I performed was very strong, and it normally takes care of any spiritual entities. And for the next 2 days, I was quiet at the house. That's when I got another call from her, this time around 7 p.m., and I could hear the noises coming from inside of the house over the phone. So I rushed over, and when I pulled up in the driveway, the place was alive with phenomenon. Realizing that I was outside, she came running out of the house, straight to me and into my arms. That's when she first told me what she saw. A tall, skinny man, whose arms extended down below his waist. This creature had simply manifested himself right in front of her in the living room. As we stood in the driveway, there were these sounds coming from the tree line, as if something was circling around, back and forth, breaking tree limbs. To the right of her trailer was this open area. The sound stopped right in that direction, so I quickly walked into that area with her following right behind me. And suddenly, this thing manifested right in front of me. It was 9 feet tall, and I found myself slowly looking up into the face of this creature. Now, the face itself was nothing more than this pale flesh. Beneath it, you could see some type of skeletal structure, but there was no eyes, no mouth, no nose, no ears. And for a moment, I found myself locked in pure fear, unlike anything I ever faced in my life. Just when I started to think about raising my blade, that's when it picked me up and held me in the air. And I'm not going to lie to you and try and sound brave. I did have my blade in my hand, and I swung my arm, but it wasn't trying to cut it or hit it. It was out of fear. That's when I was thrown 20 feet backwards. And when I landed on the ground, I didn't roll, I slid. Again, I have to admit, I was shaken up. Never experienced anything like this in my life. And when I looked up, the woman I was there to help was running towards me. After I came to my senses, we walked the property looking for this Slender Man. But it was gone. Why and where it went, I do not know. But I can tell you one thing. You don't want to encounter this creature.